I am Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, and this is really an important part of the evolution of policing. Throughout the years, police officers throughout the entire country, for the most part, in the beginning of the century, had to use lethal methods to restrain those who have not committed a crime, but were dealing from emotional issues. And we have constantly attempted to find ways of how do we find a non-lethal way to restrain a suspect who is dangerous to himself, to civilians, or even to the officers who are responding. And we all know the cases, the countless number of cases, from the Bush case that happened years ago where a young man had a hammer, to the cases of other emotionally disturbed individuals. A family member calls the police attempts to do all that he or she can do to restrain the person, only to lead to a serious bodily injury in many cases, and in some cases, a loss of life. So the endless pursuit of finding a non-lethal manner of subduing a person with emotional disturbed issues, particularly when violent, is something that I believe we've come to the solution and what we call an important wrap using technology of the BolaWrap. We're going to do a demonstration of that today, but we cannot underestimate how important this is. By NYPD numbers alone that was released last year, the department responded to nearly 150,000 calls for service involving a person in mental crisis. 150,000 calls. That is an astronomical number, and it only repeats over and over again. As it is reported, every 4 minutes in the city, there's a call for EDP, emotionally disturbed person. So this is a common job, and I can only recall the number of times I had to respond to an emotionally disturbed person who did not take their medication or went through some form of crisis, and you want to be there for the family, but at the same time, you want to ensure that the person does not carry out any harm to themselves or to others. The BolaWrap is a handheld remote restraint device that discharges at 8 foot in a bola-style Kevlar. Kevlar is the same material that's used on a police vest to stop a bullet. Now we're using Kevlar to restrain someone to stop serious injury to them. This is an amazing opportunity, an amazing evolution in the concept of policing. Suspects are restrained with the minimum to no pain. And the goal is not to cause serious physical injury to someone. The non-lethal technology is designed to be utilized early in a police encounter, not after the encounter has gotten out of hand, but it's immediately to get there. The most important aspect of policing is control. If you can get there and get the suspect under control immediately, or the person who's acting in a dangerous fashion immediately under control, you have de-escalated the situation, and no better way to do that than to wrap the person up from unable to use their hands and unable to use their feet. And this Bola device accomplishes both those opportunities to do so. This is an excellent opportunity. And what is also important about the BolaWrap are those who are representing the device. Ex-law enforcement officers. The number of years that they have put into service shows that they understand what life is like in real time. This is not a product that is designed by those who sat back in the textbook and trying to be theoretical about policing. These are individuals who actually were on the street, patrolling, responding to these jobs, and it really brings a very important dynamic to this device. When you look at some of the numbers, out of those 150,000 emergency calls for emotionally disturbed person, the number that jumps off at me, that is a total of approximately 15,000 instances of force in EDP cases. And this is go from wrestling someone to the ground to using the taser, and in some cases, even using your firearm. So the numbers really are high numbers, and it's imperative that we find a more humane way of dealing with a violent, emotionally disturbed person. When you look at the fatal shooting last July of Dwayne June, an emotionally disturbed man in East Flatbush, June charged cops with a bread knife and was shot after a taser shock appeared to have little effect. We have witnessed that several times. There are some people who a taser does not impact them. There are many cases where individuals will pull the taser prongs out of them, or if they're wearing heavy clothing, it never makes contact with the skin. There's a lot of hit and miss with the taser. It's not a 100% success rate, and we want to alleviate as much as possible any person being injured when you go on these emotionally disturbed person jobs. So today, the call is for the police department to use a product of this magnitude, to use the BOLA on a pilot project level, where we can have an opportunity, just as we use other technology, to see, can we incorporate this into the policing, everyday policing, either having the patrol sergeants carry it or police officers individually carried on patrol after they're trained, and give an opportunity to scale up this product. We did the same thing with the speed loaders. We did the same thing with the 9mm. We did the same thing with the extended baton. If New York City is able to show the benefit of using a product of this magnitude, it would cascade throughout the entire law enforcement community, and that is our hopes, that we move in that direction. So I'm joined here by retired Assistant Sheriff from Los Angeles County, Assistant Sheriff Rothens, who's going to go into the final components of the product, and then we will do a sampling of how the product actually operates to give you an idea of the success of it. And we are willing at this time, in addition to that, to have any volunteer from the media that would always also like to be wrapped up. How about that? Assistant Sheriff Rothens.
Mike? Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being here this morning. We're going to show you just a couple videos. One is an incident that happened earlier this year in South Carolina that we believe that had this product been deployed in that situation, the outcome would have been much different. So if we could play that, please. So this is the officers responded to an individual that had committed an infraction and is now in a slow-speed pursuit. This is the individual that they pursued, an 86-year-old gentleman suffering from dementia. We as law enforcement must do better. I take this personal. I'm not sure if any of you have had an incident in your family of a family member suffering from dementia. My father passed away close to 2 months ago as an 88-year-old man suffering from dementia. I know when he was 86-year-old how confused he was. He thought he could drive. He thought he could walk out of the house. It wasn't his fault. He was confused. It was a medical condition, just like so many people suffering from a mental health crisis across the United States. As law enforcement, we must do better. We must move forward, as the President said, and deal with individuals in a more humane way. If we can now show the video of the product. starting to deploy the device now. As you heard, it's loud. It is propelled by a half-charged 9mm blank. So it sounds close to what a gunshot does. We're going to hand out hearing protection for all of you to use, and we'll deploy it right here. And then we'll answer any questions afterwards. If everybody has their hearing protection in. You ready? Mm-hmm.
This is Marvel meeting reality. Spider-Man has nothing on Bola.
And what do you cut it off?
Yes.
You want, unless they want to come up and take
Use
a closer shot
EMT
of it.
scissors or seatbelt cutters.
You want to come up and take
so
a
it's
closer
no
shot of
threat
it.
to the person or the officer.
Now, can you move your legs, Eric?
No, not at all. This is Kevlar. Kevlar is extremely strong. This is what police use to stop a bullet, and you cannot move your legs at all. You feel when it went around, you felt a little pinch, you know, where I guess the final piece that went around. But other than that, there's no pain here at all. There's no pain here at all. You felt a little pinch when you went around, but other than that, you feel no pain, and you cannot move your legs at all. Trust me.
And we're going to fire it again against one of our employees. We'll wrap him a couple times, and then the president's going to wrap him.
That's amazing.
So
Our next scenario will be two officers with an EDP situation where we want to de-escalate it before it gets worse. And we'll demonstrate that on our own subject.
Ready? Everybody have their hearing protection in?
Yes.
Here's a scenario where, like we said, we want to de-escalate and control all of his movement. And we do a shoot and swarm. We're on him, controlling him, and rescuing him. We're rescuing him.
So if you take back to that video that we showed of the 86-year-old man suffering from dementia, it would have been a completely different outcome. Rather than tasing him and sending 50,000 volts of electricity through him,
you know what? We
would
need
have
to actually
restrained.
the microphone.
Where's the mic?
We need you at the mic, or can we take these things out now?
Well,
Or are you
he's
gonna
going to
do it
fire
again?
it one time.
Are you going to fire?
Can I do one more time?
We're going to do it one more time. Right. So as we showed you in the video earlier of the 86-year-old gentleman suffering from dementia, had this tool been deployed there, the outcome would have been significantly different. He would not have been tased and have volts of electricity sent through his body. He would have merely been restrained and received the help that he needed as opposed to pain.
To have you respond to a job, you're 8 feet away, and to have someone rap like this, not only have you brought him under control, but you also de-escalated your anxiety and your tension. Because when you run into a job and you have an EDP who is disorderly, you are also hyped. But once you have him rapped like this, all of a sudden you're falling down. Your entire mindset is a different mindset. Gotcha. You know, this is very interesting. As I never used this before, but the taking the guess out of the product, to have a laser dot, you're not going to make the mistake and hit someone in a place that you're not intended to hit them. So the laser actually shows. So this is, I never used it before, and so this is an easy training, a simple training. Load the cartridge, cock it back. You want to turn on your laser. Now you have that laser. See that dot? You know where you're going. So you're not aiming at someone's face. Sorry about that. Not aiming in their face. You're not hitting a civilian on the side. The laser is telling you exactly where you want to be. Okay? Take the safety off, so you don't even shoot it until you're ready because the safety is on. So you shoot it when you're ready to shoot it. And so we can point to the chest. If the person, if his hands are up, let's say both his hands up. Can you put both your hands up? It makes no sense to shoot him in the chest if both his hands are up. So then you go for the legs, so he can't run towards you. You can put him down. Okay? This is a damn good product, man. and he is not getting out of this. He's not getting out of this. You know that? This is so they could answer the question, but the name of the game is you come to a scene, you have an emotionally disturbed person. Like you saw a perfect example when the officers was dealing with the emotionally disturbed person. You pick and coordinate your time of when you're going to make your move, even when you shoot a taser, when you make the decision to actually approach someone. So you pick your time. You know, if he's standing still, that's an optimum time. But even if he's running towards you with the laser showing where you're hitting, that increases the possibility of making that strike that you want.
That's correct. This is not intended to replace any tools that officers currently carry. It's intended to be an additional tool, one that can be used very early in an encounter, before force escalates, to reduce the amount of pain that an individual suffering from a mental health crisis would experience.
Now, when his hands are up, in the heat of the moment, if somebody refuses and instead of hitting the legs, they hit up in the head, you get choked.
No, it doesn't have the strength. It wouldn't have the strength to wrap around your neck and choke you. It doesn't have the strength if your arms are out to the side to wrap around your arms and pull them in. It's not that type of a tool. So it's a tool to restrict mobility. It isn't one necessarily that would be used in all foot pursuits, but it certainly could delay somebody from running away from you or running towards you.
What kind of, have there been any fatalities from anybody who's used it, any department that's used it?
No, we've been out to about, in the last 4 months is when we began deploying it with police officers and police departments. We've been to a little over 30 agencies across the United States. And some have it in the field, some are going through a testing phase, and some are going through a policy writing phase. So it's very, very new, very early, and that's why we're excited to be here in New York. Yes, sir.
Is it possible that a shot can escalate the situation?
As in the person believing that they actually was shot by a gun. I don't believe so. I believe that the sound of the shot may startle someone, you know, because it is a loud sound. But I think that when you look at how the tool is used in the hands of a well-trained person, it's going to do just the opposite. It's going to de-escalate the situation. And as I stated, I never used a device before. And to be able to be dead on, probably the most important aspect of this device is that laser, and to be able to know how to point it and know where your target is going, that's a real win. The 9mm, many of them now, I had a laser on my gun, and many of them now have the laser because that really alleviates the possibility of an innocent person getting hit.
But just so you know, in the not too distant future, Scott Cohen, CEO. In the not too distant future, we were going to have a version where it's going to be virtually silent. It won't be using a 9mm, it'll be using a CO2 or just an electric version. So there's certainly, there's going to be lots of more applications once we go into a virtually silent mode.
The NYPD, Commissioner O'Neill was asked about this last week, and he says he knows that Yonkers is doing it, and he has no intention of trying it out right now. He says that might change in the future, but at the moment, they're not ready to do anything like that. So are you going to contact him or?
Yeah, two things. One, anytime you roll out a product like this that changes the concept of policing, The first version, we have the loud noise, as it was stated. The next version, you may not have the loud noises, or it's going to be quieter. The next version is going to be able to do something else. The beauty is that we're at the starting point. This is at the embryo stage of using a non-lethal restraining device. A second, the company did a display, and I was in communication with the police department, speaking to John Miller and sharing this with them. I know that they had a look at it, and I cannot imagine anyone in policing that after seeing this device would not start the point of doing a pilot project. That is unimaginable to me. One thing we know for sure, the current systems that we are using, more people can have a higher possibility of losing their lives or serious physical injury than this. We need to do all that we can to find ways to decrease the possibility that a person with emotional issues is not the victim of a death. This does it. That's irrefutable. I cannot see you're not being able to get a good shot. In the real response of policing, anything could happen, and this is not a magic wrap that no matter under all circumstances, 100%, no. But I see 70% of those response to emotionally disturbed person that this would handle it without a problem, And I look at many of the incidents that have taken place. If you notice, there are those moments. You have to pick your moments. A well-trained police officer is going to pick his moments. Is he going to do it while the person is frailing his arms, or is he going to wait until he drops them? Is he going to do it while the person is doing jumping jacks, or is he going to wait until he stops and pauses for a moment? A well-trained police officer is going to pick his moments. He's going to know what is the best way to use the device, but most importantly, he has that laser to show when is his opportune time to move in. He controls the situation better than any other device I have witnessed in policing and being able to control the situation. I would have loved to have had this on patrol. Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna let you. And that's why it's important for the training. This is all part of the training. You come to a situation, you have an elderly person, nonviolent. Soon as if I'm in a similar situation like that, soon as I strike him with the wrap, I'm immediately responding to get to him. And if I'm looking at his age, maybe I will strike his legs and not strike his hands so he could break his fall. It's all about knowing how to use the tool correctly in your training, going through scenarios, when you use it, how you use it, what would you do if a person is coming at you rapidly. So it's about all of these scenarios in the training. What I just received today was a one-time introductory of how to hold a device, but a well-trained officer that's using it in a proper fashion, this is a win, and he's going to minimize the injury to a person.
You were exactly right. Couldn't add anything else.
The most important role of a police officer responding to an emotionally disturbed person that's violent is to restrain that individual so he would not commit any harm to himself or to others. This does that. You will restrain, and you would do the most important thing. You will control the situation. So this device will give a police officer the most important tool he has, and that's restraint. I think it's a combination. Of course, the product inventors, they have their package of how they're going to train officers to use it, and now the police agencies will cater that product and that training to how they want to do it. Each agency has a different level of how they want the escalation of use of force. This device, normally police have an escalation of use of force, baton, taser, firearm. This device is lower than all of those escalations. I would encourage officers to use a device like this before they use any other level of force. This should be the first level of restraint before you go to a baton, before you go to a taser, before you go to your firearm. This should be the lowest level of restraint. This is one of the most pain-free level of restraint that is on the market today. Yes? I think that someone would look at the incident with the 86-year-old person with dementia and say that, why would you need any force at all? That's not the real universe of policing. If a person is 105, you don't know his strength, you don't know his capacity, particularly when they're dealing with mental health. You could have a person 86 years old that is on some form of mind-altering drugs. When an officer responds to an incident of an emergency disturbed person, he is not aware why that person is emotionally disturbed. And it may seem like, in retrospect, what someone could have done, but that is not in the real time of policing. You need something in real time that will assist you to restrain, control the situation, get it under control, and then you can sit back and do an evaluation. That incident there with the 86-year-old, I would have used this device. This way, I would have minimized the harm to him and minimized the harm to the other officers or any civilian. Yes. Of course.
This device is $800 a unit and $30 a cartridge. There will be a newer product coming out in January that's a different color, yellow, that has actually a line laser that makes it a little even easier to aim, and that device will be $925 a unit with $30 a cartridge. But a comparison to the pain that's inflicted on an individual suffering from mental health crisis or the civil litigation that's the result of that, this is nothing.
Yes. Yes. Some officers. Yes, I am. Every officer should receive crisis intervention training. This was something that we called for years ago after an emotionally disturbed person was shot and killed when he was on the ledge. There's no reason we don't have that training in place. Every officer should go through that training. And it's part of an officer leaves his or her precinct with a toolbox to correct conditions. Crisis intervention training must be one of those tools in the box, just as his firearm, his baton, his taser, and any other device. The more tools in that box, the easier it is to correct conditions. And that training is part of the tool that we need to use. A well-trained officer on crisis intervention with a device like this in his possession, you're saving lives. That's the only way you can save lives.
President Adams, are you in touch with the police department? What are they saying?
We communicated with the police department day before yesterday, and they were interested in looking at the device and deciding if they're going to incorporate it. And I think that the best thing now is to speak with someone over there, particularly emergency service unit that responds to serious incidents of emotionally disturbed persons, so that we can make a determination on how to use this on a pilot project. This is a no-brainer for a pilot project. Scaling up, critique it, pick it apart, see how it operates in the field, but this is a no-brainer.
So is it fair to say, and accurate, that they're looking into it?
Yeah, I know it was a demonstration yesterday with the police department, and I'm sure they're going to make a determination. I don't want to speak on behalf of the police department, but I'm sure they're going to make a determination on what's the next steps. Yes. Okay? That's no good stuff. Good advice. Good advice.